All right, so hello everyone out there, and welcome to today's Team Talk. For those of you who haven't joined us before, Team Talk is essentially where we bring in the experts so that we can pick their brain, so we can learn all there is to know about eating disorders and potentially comorbid illnesses that typically come with eating disorders or other issues that may affect our lives. And so today we have with us, for those of you who've been with us before, you know our good friend, Dr. Terry Hagan. So hello, Terry.
Hello, Kim.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm great. How are you?
Perfect. Which is good because today what we're going to talk about is depression. So since we're both in a good mood, it will put us in a good space to talk reasonably about depression and some of the issues around depression. So from a clinical standpoint, Dr. Hagan, can you give us just an overview of what depression is from a clinical sense?
Sure. Well, so if a patient comes to me and says, I'm suffering with depression, then the first thing I'm going to think is this a real clinical depression, or is it what we might call depressive thinking? And so if we go way back to when I was in medical school, one of the first things I learned about depression is that it can be divided into clinical depression and situational depression. So, it is as it sounds, that if the depression is being caused by a situation, then it's not quite the same thing as clinical depression, in which the patient is depressed irrespective of any situation or stress that's going on. So then we have, our DSM, which organizes psychiatric diagnoses. So then major depression is a label on a group of symptoms, and patients have to meet criteria for that diagnosis, ideally. So on that list of symptoms, for instance, there's disturbed sleep, disturbed appetite, poor concentration, low energy and motivation, feeling hopeless, helpless, worthless, inadequate. There's a tendency to move around real slowly, and then thoughts of suicide start to go through the mind, and that, of course, it is a matter of degree. With depression, it's a common thing for that thought to go through your mind, but then you can immediately dismiss it. And I have a lot of patients who don't want to even mention that to me for fear that just saying yes to that one will land them in the hospital, and that's not the case. So we can talk separately about suicidality. Obviously, depression can be so bad that someone just doesn't want to go on.
Yeah.
And that's when the suicidal thoughts start to become rather risky.
Yeah.
So then a lot of people are depressed, and what they mean by that is life is really difficult right now. So for instance, let's just say that, a man who doesn't have the best marriage, but he's committed and he's got children, and then he loses his job. That can be extremely discouraging. And in that discouragement, then yes, it's situational, but on the other hand, he may need a little help from medication.
Yeah.
Because situations like that can be so burdensome that some medication temporarily can be used to prop them up a little bit, help them focus a little bit better, and then that leads to better concentration, better thinking, and better ability then to work his way out of that situation.
Yeah. Or even just having someone to talk to. I know a lot of times we're kind of brought up not to have feelings, and if we're depressed, we just pretend we're happy, and so just to have someone that you can talk to, I think is beneficial.
So getting back to the DSM, we have major depression if you're meeting all of those criteria for a period of time. It's all rather precisely defined. We have chronic low-grade depression, which is thought of as dysthymia. We have depression in bipolar disorder, which we tend to call bipolar depression, but the accurate diagnosis is bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
Um, and then we have adjustment disorder with depression. So that is the situational depression.
Yeah.
So it's frequently appropriate to call it an adjustment disorder instead of major depression, because that diagnosis implies that this is temporary. This
Yeah.
is not really mental illness as much as it is difficulty adjusting to a situation.
And if you have someone that seems to move from one bad situation to another, to another, to another, I mean, do you still consider that situational, or is that like a pattern that would then be classified as major depression?
Well, if a patient comes into my office and I see that pattern, I'm going to be wondering what that really is. And
Yeah.
at that point, to me, it's not particularly important what label I put on it, as much as it is
Yeah.
important just to understand what is this pattern, and if we, meaning the patient and I, can understand that more, develop some insight into it, then that the patient then is thinking, well, I don't like that pattern. I'm not going to repeat that.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm going to see it coming the next time now that I'm aware of it.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting when you talk about levels of severity, because I remember, like, in the military, when you go in for a mental health appointment, they have you fill out this questionnaire, and one of the questions is, have you ever thought that you would be better not waking up? And I
Yeah,
think that a lot of people may have that feeling from time to time, even if it's just, I don't really want to get out of bed today. But then, progressively, there's another question that says, do you want to kill yourself? And that's a much different feeling than this day is rough, I really don't want to face the day. Not waking up would be great, but when you start to put it into words of, do you want to
yeah.
kill yourself, I think most people just want some relief.
Uh, so when I'm interviewing a patient specifically for suicidality,
Yeah.
then I'm going to ask first, are these thoughts going through your mind? Not that you would ever act on them, because patients are very quick to say, but I would never do anything.
Yeah.
And usually they have reasons. And the two most important reasons would be, I could never do that to my family,
Yeah.
or it's against my beliefs. I believe I'd go straight to hell if I did that.
Yeah.
Uh, those are the two most common. In depression, now there's a different type of suicidality that we can come back to.
Yeah.
But if we're talking symptoms of depression, where the patient is so low and feeling so bad that they just don't want to go on, then what we have are these thoughts only. So I call that passive suicidality,
Yeah.
meaning passive, where I wouldn't act on it. All right.
Yeah.
So then the next question in this escalating interview is, um, have you thought about what you might do?
Yeah.
So that starts into a discussion about planning.
Yeah.
And so once a patient starts to think, yeah, well, I've thought about using a gun.
Yeah.
Well, do you have guns in the house? Should we remove guns, et
Yeah.
cetera? But we'll come to that later. So then if the patient is thinking about what he might do, then the next question is, well, do you have a plan?
Yeah.
Have you worked that out? And then lastly, are you afraid of what you might do?
Yeah.
Are you afraid of losing control over that and you know, jumping off that bridge
Yeah.
or taking that overdose? Um, so there has to be a certain trust between the psychiatrist and the patient. That's an admission to the hospital.
Yeah.
I cannot at that point get talked out of that
Yeah.
because um, patients will often say anything in the moment to
Oh yeah.
avoid hospitalization,
Yeah.
but then you can't trust what's going to
Yeah.
happen after that. And the physician's primary responsibility is the safety of the patient, and in
Yeah.
this case, to protect him from himself.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've had patients that I've told them, I'm afraid you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
You've told me that you're afraid of what you might do, and that means that this is on the verge of being out of control, and we have to essentially protect you from yourself.
Yeah.
Um, so at that point, literally the police are called,
Yeah.
and and the patient is taken to the hospital against his will,
Yeah.
um, because I mean that's just the way it's done. And so it is a matter of judgment, on the other hand, whether you've reached that point.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most difficult decisions,
Yeah.
or the most difficult conversations to have sometimes, because I have had the occasional patient who says, I'm afraid of what I might do, but they really don't mean it.
Yeah.
Meaning,
Yeah.
now that I think about it, yeah, I could be afraid of that, but they're saying that as if to say, the message in it
Yeah.
is, I want you to know how bad I feel right now.
Yeah.
And
Well, and for me, like I went through this, and that's honestly why I got trained in suicide intervention skills. It was more so to help myself than it was to, that I was looking to help anybody else. And exactly what you're saying. I mean, when I knew that I needed help was when the frequency that I was Googling best ways to kill yourself. That was when I knew that okay, I've reached a point where this is scary. And just as you said, the thing that I hung on to that kept me, on this side of that, was the fact that I knew that if I killed myself, it would kill my parents. And so in my brain I kept going, no, like I have to get help, because I know that would kill my parents. And so, but it's a fine line. I will say it's a fine line between I'm just thinking about it, maybe I've even started to explore it. And for me, one of the things that was tough is in the military. And even what you're explaining, once you say the words "I want to kill myself," like it in the military, it's quicker than in the civilian world. I mean, it kicks off a whole lot of, like, you're not going to be alone for a
right.
while.
So what happens there is that there are, well, there are those of us in the mental health field, and I'll just say psychiatrists, even though I think others are capable of doing this. But we have the expertise to do that interview.
Yeah.
Other people do not have that expertise, and as soon
Yeah.
as they hear it, it works the same way in the school system.
Yeah.
As soon as they even hear it, it's like, you got to be evaluated immediately.
Yeah.
We don't have the expertise to do that, but we do know that this needs an evaluation
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah. Well, for us, even if I said it to a psychologist, it's an automatic notification to my commander. And that's what I was afraid of. And I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of is if I say these things, what are the repercussions? Are they going to lock me up? Are they going to do this? I said, but I'll tell you, that was, and don't get me wrong, it was a little rough getting through it, but it was like unloading my burden. Because when you're constantly in your head thinking, I really want to kill myself, that's a secret that you're hanging on to, that you can't talk to anybody about. And when I finally said that to someone, you know, and it happened to be a chaplain, which for us is safe because, you know, chaplains have, you know, confidentiality and all of that. But just taking off that mask and being able to tell someone exactly how I felt and exactly where I was and how depressed I was, it was a huge burden lifted.
Well, you know, I'm in that position as well, in that the doctor-patient relationship is confidential,
Yeah.
and we don't just jettison that in that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
So, you know, lots of times it's like, okay, we kind of need to talk about this, and this is totally confidential, and it is
Yeah.
up to the point where, you know, I am concerned that I mean, it crosses the line.
Yeah.
Once it crosses the line with me,
Yeah.
then confidentiality is no longer
Yeah.
the overriding principle. It is safety overrides confidentiality at
Yeah.
that point.
And rightfully
But
so. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
in the doctor-patient relationship, which is based upon trust and connection,
Yeah.
then, you know, the patient does trust that I can talk about, and lots of times we just talk it out.
Yeah.
And it turns out that, you know, this is not something that requires immediate hospitalization. This is something that just needed to be talked out.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and sometimes it's just as small as reconnecting them to life. You know, going, hey, you know, I do love my parents. I do have things to look forward to. I do, you know, this is bad, but this is temporary. And sometimes you get so, like you talk about the depressive thinking, but sometimes you get in such a loop that all you can think is, this is terrible, this is terrible, this is terrible. There's
Yeah.
only more terrible to come. But sometimes, you know, just talking to someone, you can realize that, okay, this is temporary. You know, this too shall pass.
Right. So early in this conversation, we were talking diagnostically,
Yeah.
and now you're alluding to treatment. So treatment is going to be medication
Yeah.
and psychotherapy. So the more situational it is, the more that psychotherapy
Yeah.
is important. And so ideally, you want to do both.
Yeah.
Occasionally, there will be a patient who just doesn't seem to have the issues, and so the primary focus is the medication, and hoping that we can, you know,
Yeah.
an elevation in that depressed mood, kind of back toward normal within a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, people think, well, these medicines really don't kick in for 6 to 8 weeks, and that's just not accurate. And I say that over and over again. These medicines start to work right away.
Yeah.
Improvement is often experienced within the first few days. The medicines mature in
Yeah.
that they are working at their best in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But it's not as if you have to wait 6 weeks and then all of a sudden it kicks in.
Yeah.
That is kind of unfortunately, that's just the way it's said. It's just like, I mean, it's actually annoying to me that people
Yeah.
say, well, these medicines really don't kick in for 6 weeks. That's just not right.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
And so I will follow up with patients pretty closely in order to make sure that they are getting better sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
That's on the medication side. Even when there are not situations,
Yeah.
psychotherapy can be very helpful for people whose depression has taught them to think in negative terms.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I call that depressive thinking.
Yeah.
So there are actually a couple of different types of depressive thinking, but there's the type that is kind of like, I'm depressed in the morning, and in the moment I'm down, I'm discouraged, so it's a cloudy day. Well, a cloudy day with rain can be very restful and very welcome and very positive. Uh, but I kind of use that as an example
Yeah.
sometimes. If it's a cloudy day, is that a good thing or a
Yeah.
bad thing?
Yeah.
But then there are people who have had a depression over a longer period of time. And that depression then has kept them in that mindset of thinking negatively.
Yeah.
The symptoms of the depression that have to do with being helpless and hopeless and
Yeah.
inadequate and unworthy. That's the kind of thinking. I mean, that is that going on over a long time kind of results in that person thinking in those terms, so that even when medication is making them better, there's still that
Yeah.
of thinking going on. And I think in terms of brain circuitry that's going over and over again, repeating itself because it's been so reinforced over time. And
Well, and
so
I should have said in the beginning that you started as a neurosurgeon. So when you're talking about the brain, you know both sides of the brain.
So when a patient is got that depressive thinking going on, that is another reason why psychotherapy really needs to be done, so that the patient can start to identify that, and it's like, okay, there I go again. That's a depressive thought. If I were to spin that in a positive direction, what would that look like? So at least they learn that there's a choice between the depressive and the positive. And choosing the positive over and over again then starts to offset that depressive thinking that has become hardwired.
Yeah. Well, in the way I heard it described, is it's like if you drive down a muddy road and it creates those rivets in the road. So those rivets or those neural pathways are in your brain and they don't disappear. What you basically have to do is take another path and create a new neural pathway that is stronger than the old neural pathway.
It is important to settle into therapy for a longer period of time, so that those new pathways can be reinforced to the point where, again, there is then a choice to go with the old, go with the new. But if you want to bring eating disorders into this, we know that a lot of eating disorder is hardwiring that's real hard to offset with new hardware. I mean, we talk about new hardwiring, but it is, those of us who know to think in those terms, we have our own struggles with eating, and it's always the old hardwiring that is reasserting itself.
Yeah. It's like riding a bike. It can be a good skill or a bad skill, and once you get overwhelmed, those old skills tend to pop back up. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because one of the things I've done in my house, and my friends give me a hard time, but I have these little signs all over my house, and it's just like a little reminder. And even on my phone, like I have alarms on my phone that will remind me that hey, like my morning when I wake up, like my alarm says alive to your life, and it just reminds me to that I want to be living my life with passion, fully. I want to be present. And so these little and I know not everyone likes affirmations, but even in my gym I have a sign that says you're strong and you're getting stronger. So on those days where I feel weak or I feel like I'm not, doing good enough, then I go, hey, you know what? Maybe I didn't eat perfectly, but there's tomorrow, or there's, whatever works for you to pull you back out and remind you that, one mistake is not a, let's jump into a full-fledged binge.
Well, yes, I would agree that all those little things that you do might seem silly. But what they represent is constant reminders of what you do want to be thinking about. And it works. I can tell you it works to do that, because the more you remind yourself, the more you're reinforcing the new circuitry.
No, it's awesome. When you hear it, you think, oh, that's silly, that's not going to help me, but it really does. It's just like like if you want to drink more water and you're constantly getting reminders to drink water, you go, okay, well, when I see this, I drink water. When I see this, I think positive thoughts.
Or if you want to take a weight training metaphor there, if you want to be really buff and all, you don't just get it with one workout. You have to do it over and over and over and over
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
And it's the same way with training your brain over and over and over again. You know, sometimes we call it a habit, and we
Yeah.
say that it takes 3 weeks to create a habit.
Yeah.
Yes, but then there's a lot of brain circuitry that just won't get strong enough in 3 weeks.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
particularly in the treatment of depression, it's something you have to stay
Yeah.
after. You have
Yeah.
to keep doing that until the patient just has that cognitive skill of
Yeah.
being able to regulate it himself.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the clients that I work with, they're older women. And so they have had an eating disorder since they were 10, 12 years old, and 30 years later they're getting help for
Right.
it. So those are really grooved in, ideas about eating and about your body and about exercise even.
And that's true. And so what I like to remind people about is that even when the hardwiring is strong, you
Yeah.
don't set yourself up
Yeah.
for anything other than improvement.
Yeah.
Meaning, I
Yeah.
want to be better at this week than I was last week.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so I discovered, I think I've told you, I discovered a few months ago that I do have a tendency to binge.
Yeah.
I mean, I was actually recording a 6 weeks of weight loss. I mean, I
Yeah.
was doing daily recordings, and the point was to be honest about what I was doing and what I was experiencing, and in all that, there were 3 weekends in a row when I binged once on the weekend,
Yeah.
and by the time this happened 3 times,
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to I realize this is so interesting that when
Yeah.
you're really honest with yourself, you develop insights that
Yeah.
you won't develop if you're
Yeah.
making excuses and otherwise resisting
Yeah.
things. So, I realized that I binge.
Yeah.
Now, I hadn't thought about that before. I mean, I diagnosed binge eating disorder, but I never thought that I have a problem binging. Well, you don't binge once a week and have binge eating disorder, but the point is that okay, that's a binge, Terry.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can't do that and be
Yeah.
recording about 6 weeks of weight loss. But I talk about it on my program because that's what we all struggle with.
Yeah.
And again, it's a point about, if we're going to struggle successfully, we have to be honest
Yeah.
first. And then we don't look for anything close to
Yeah.
perfection. We look for improvement.
Yeah.
And so as soon as I realized I had a problem with the
Yeah.
binge,
Yes.
then what I did was I said, okay, I'm going to do a cognitive override. I'm going to create new circuitry in my brain.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take a cue from Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
The alcoholics, when they're having their meeting, they'll kind of go around the room at the beginning of the meeting and say something like, "Hi, my name is Joe. I'm an alcoholic. My date of sobriety is some
Yeah.
point in the past. And I resolve not to drink just for today."
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, I can use that as the template, so to speak.
Yeah.
So then I thought, okay, so here was, I memorized it. So I have a problem with binge eating disorder,
Yeah.
or not eating disorder. I have a problem binging.
Yes.
I resolve not to binge just for today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I started saying that to myself
Yeah.
over and over again. And so then in my recordings, I was able to say it's working,
Yeah.
because now when now I can catch myself. No, Terry, you're about to binge again.
Yeah.
I'm not going to binge.
Yeah.
And I would start to say that I'm not going to binge. And then I didn't. And I
Yeah.
really have not had a problem binging since then. I will get full.
Yeah.
I don't think we lose weight when we need to get full.
Yeah.
It's kind of a rule, and I'm sure people might debate that, but that's my rule that works for me. We're kind of getting off the subject of depression and
Yeah.
into eating disorder again.
Yeah.
and maybe just connect the two. I would say that if you're really struggling with depression, then you're not going to be successful managing your weight because you just don't have enough focus.
Yeah.
So, I think, you know, I've noticed in my own experience with weight management, and in particular losing weight, that I can't lose weight unless I make it a front burner, number one priority focus.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I decided to record every day is
Yeah.
because then every day I had to be focused on it. And there was some accountability in that, but the point is stay focused,
Yeah.
right? Then the problem is it's not realistic to stay focused for the rest of your life. And
Yeah.
so once you get your weight off, then what?
Yeah.
The problem of losing weight is that you will not keep it off if all you're doing is thinking, I want to keep my weight off.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Well,
and you might have a reason having to do with vanity, or you might tell
yeah.
yourself, I know it's right, I want to
Yeah.
be healthy, but you won't do it unless there is something else, a stronger pathway that is offsetting that
Yeah.
desire to eat too much and to eat the unhealthy food.
Yeah.
And for me, keeping my weight off and even seeing it drift downwards is when I have become absolutely convinced that I have to do two things. One is I have to be eating healthy food, and that means mostly vegetables.
Yeah.
And I mean mostly, like 3/4 of what I put in my mouth needs to be that big salad. Now there are a few nuts in there and a little yogurt and olive oil and the like. And as soon as you start talking about olive oil and nuts, you have to start
Yeah.
watching your calories more. But it is the healthy eating and the exercise.
Yeah.
I used to say, yeah, I lost 70 pounds without exercise. And so I am proof that you don't have to exercise to lose weight.
Yeah.
Well,
But
that's
I
technically
just want to
true.
I just want to stop you real quick, Terry, because one clarification point I want to make for the
Yeah.
audience, because we are talking to people with eating disorders, is that our goal is not weight loss. Our goal is to be healthy, and our goal is to have a healthy relationship with food and have a healthy relationship with our bodies, and to overall be healthy in our relationship with the people around us. So I don't mean to cut you off. It's just I know that when we start talking about weight loss, a lot of times that can be a trigger point for people with eating disorders. And so I just wanted to clarify, because I know you and I know the way you think, that when you're talking weight loss, you're not talking unhealthy weight loss. What you're talking about is I want to make myself as healthy as possible. So I just wanted to clarify that one point, because I know how you think. And I
Yeah.
know that's the message that you really want to be sending.
Well, and of course, that was what I was getting ready to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was getting ready to say that if your goal is to lose weight, you will not keep it off unless you replace it with healthy food and
Yeah.
exercise, and most importantly, that you replace it with that self-image of I choose to be healthy.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to kid myself into thinking that healthy is
Yeah.
is being 50 pounds overweight. It's not at that point. Okay, so
And it's also
then
not
we
50
go
pounds
back in the other
underweight.
direction. We go back in the other direction,
Yeah.
and with all due respect,
Yeah.
and I understand your point. We're on the same page with that,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
believe that people with eating disorders do
Yeah.
think a lot about weight loss.
Oh yeah. A
And
lot.
what I'm trying to do is
Yeah.
I'm trying to pull these two concepts together so that the weight loss, when it happens, is healthy
Yeah.
and it is maintained as part of a healthier lifestyle.
Well, and I would add, if it happens, because, as we talked about last week, you can be healthy and be, overweight. Like if a person looked at you, you go, okay, that person is overweight, they are unhealthy. But, there are people who are bigger than what we would call ideal that, you know, their heart is healthy, their body is healthy. And so we're, you know, we're talking about weight loss, but you know, weight loss is, you know, neither here nor there. It's just health. So,
You know, I, uh, I'm not able to agree with that completely, because I think what it does is it invites people to think that it's good enough to eat healthy food and walk around the neighborhood, and that therefore they are healthy.
yeah,
They are healthy, and they are healthier than they would be if they were eating unhealthy food and
yeah,
not getting any exercise at all. But it is a matter of, you know, we'll call it medical statistics, that people who are overweight have higher triglycerides, higher insulin resistance. There are metabolic things going on that are not good. And so even though you might be able to, you know, say, yeah, my cardiovascular health seems to be good, and that it may be better, but I would suggest to you that, okay, we also have to talk about the concept of ideal weight. Ideal weight oftentimes on a chart is a number,
yeah, a
right?
random
So
number.
my ideal weight
Yeah.
is 141. I haven't been 141 since I was 14 years old. And
Yeah,
there have been times in my life when I was clearly
yeah,
close to my ideal weight, even though I was, you know, 15 pounds heavier than 141.
yeah,
You see. So, you know, I like to think of ideal weight as being in a range,
yeah,
but statistically, we know that, you know, and people tend to resist these charts that say what's ideal and what's normal and healthy and what's overweight and what's obese. But it is just the way medical science looks at it is that a third of the American population is not overweight.
yeah,
A third is, 2/3 is overweight, and of those, half are obese.
yeah,
So it is a matter of how high does the number go.
yeah,
And so, you know, if I know, for instance, that right now at 177 this morning, I'm 7 pounds over that line in the obese category. So
yeah,
I'm not just overweight. And people look at me and say, "You're not obese," because
yeah,
they're used to looking at people who are overweight.
yeah,
But when I think about that, that bothers me enough that I want to drop under that line again, in which I might be overweight, but I'm not obese.
yeah,
But the point is, I'm not going to tell myself that I'm healthy
yeah,
because I do 30 minutes a day on the elliptical and eat healthy food. That's a real good start, but I am not as healthy as I want to be
yeah.
until I am no more than 10 to 15 pounds over that ideal number.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I do think that you have to also consider other health. Like if my mental health is going to suffer or my relationship with my family is going to suffer, like there is a fine balance where you go, hey, you know what? If I'm 10 pounds overweight, but I'm happy and my family is happy and my health, you know, is good, then that's just 10 pounds I'm going to keep. You know, because I
Yeah.
think sometimes, you know,
Sure.
that at 10 pounds we can obsess over and you
Yes.
go, yes,
But we're
I would
not,
be healthier,
but,
but
but Kim, we're not really debating 10 pounds and whether 10 pounds overweight is healthy.
well,
I
but
think
for
what
our
we're,
audience, they may be. I mean,
what
I just
I'm,
want to make that clarification is sometimes there's a magic number that we get focused on and we won't be happy until we get there. And sometimes it could be the matter of 5, 10 pounds for a person who has, you know, an eating disorder.
right. I agree with that. But that is a thought to be treated
Yeah.
with, you know, okay. What the point I'm making is, don't think that you are 30 to 40 pounds overweight and healthy,
Yeah.
because the two don't go together. You know, what you're doing is you're stopping there. Okay, I have to tell you this story. So a few months ago, when I was recording about weight loss, um, it was a Saturday morning, and I went to get a haircut. Just went up the street, and usually I had somebody different, but my hair is not difficult to cut. I don't care who cuts it, you know.
Yeah.
And so this day, I got this woman who I'm guessing was maybe 27, 28 years old, maybe 30, and she was clearly big. Okay, and in my mind, I'm thinking 70 to 80 pounds overweight, and 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 so she said, well, what are you planning to do today? And I said, well, I think I'm going to record some weight loss videos this afternoon. Well, that triggered something in her. And she started saying, you know, I eat healthy food and I'm healthier than my friend who eats crap, she called it, who's
Yeah.
thin,
Yeah.
but eat. And so while I got that point, you know, she seemed to be so defensive in making that point, her point, that I thought, okay, you're telling me that you're healthy because you eat healthy food.
Yeah.
You know, health is a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Because I lined that up with something that I heard about my grandfather. I mean, one thing my father, who was a doctor, said when my grandfather was still alive was his knees had gone bad.
Yeah.
And this was in the days before total knee replacements.
Yeah.
And when I asked my father why are his knees bad, he said, well, knees are not designed to carry around that much weight for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And now that he's 70 years old, well, I don't remember my grandfather as being terribly overweight, but
Yeah.
easily 50, 60, 70 pounds.
Yeah.
So, you know, um, if we just talk about me, so if my ideal, I mean, my ideal, even though the chart says 141, I'm going to say 154.
Yeah.
Well, right now, I'm 23 pounds over that. All
Yeah.
right. Well, at about this weight, I'm exercising at this fitness club.
Yeah.
This is about 6 months ago now. And there was this group coaching thing. And so I was able to run 7 miles an hour on a treadmill thinking,
Yeah.
that's fantastic for my age.
Yeah.
And then the instructor had us incline the treadmill. My knee,
Oh,
my knee, I mean, it's as if I felt something tear or get compressed or something, but there was a sudden pain in my knee. Okay. Now, 6 months later, I still have a little bit of pain in my knee.
yeah.
And that's with being very careful with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I quit
Yeah.
that fitness club, and I didn't go back to doing anything until 2 or 3 weeks ago when
Yeah.
I started on my elliptical trainer. The point I'm making is at 65 years old, now I've got a bad knee. Well, is that because I made the wrong decision on a treadmill? Or is it the case that I really
Yeah.
need to be thinking
Yeah.
about healthy knees?
Yeah.
Because I'd like to be around another 30 years.
Yeah. And
And,
mobile.
and if I
Yeah.
don't really pay attention to knee
Yeah.
health,
Yeah.
then my knees are not going to hold up as long as I want them to.
Yeah. Well, and I
So
think the key, whether you're talking about, you know, a healthy weight, or if you're talking about depression, is like you're saying, is catching it early. So once you start to go, hey, like this doesn't feel right, and really getting to know your body and getting to know yourself, and going, okay, these thoughts are not helpful. These you know, and just like catching them, you know, and once you can catch them, then, you know, that early intervention kicks in. But even like getting help, you know, a lot of times we wait until it's so bad and you're so depressed to get help that it's
yeah.
more difficult to pull you out.
And just adding to that, one of the things I see as a psychiatrist, and I actually see this often, is that people have an all or none way of thinking about these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, all right, I'm going to confess I'm 50 pounds overweight.
Yeah.
I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to join the treadmill. And I'm even going to set a goal of getting that weight off by the end of the year, call it a New Year's resolution, but there's a time frame set for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen? Number one is too big a goal. Secondly, the time frame is too long. And so what they're doing is they're setting themselves up for something that's idealistic. And but it's not realistic in that if you're really honest with yourself, you're not going to maintain that.
Yeah.
It is much better then instead of thinking I'm overweight and this is ideal, so I'm going to eat healthy, join a gym, and I'm going to get down there just by declaring that.
Yeah.
No, it won't happen that way. It will be in the gray area. And meaning you just simply, if you are honest and asking yourself, what are the chances that I'm actually going to be at that weight in 6 months? Then you have to say, well, okay, all right, that's very unlikely to happen. So what I'm saying is, don't set yourself up for failure. Instead of setting these goals that are huge and probably unrealistic, it's much better to think in terms of improvement.
Yeah.
All right. Even with me, I learned I had a kidney problem 4 months ago now. All right. So I read books on kidney health and all that. Have I plugged in perfect kidney health? No.
Yeah.
But I am a whole lot closer than I was 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And my thinking is, if I'm closer, that works.
Yeah.
I mean, for instance, I'm gradually using up all the butter in the house. I'm not eating an excess amount of butter, but I'm also kind of using it up as a way of kind of phasing into that healthier lifestyle. It's good enough to phase into it and to know every week, okay, I'm getting better.
Yeah.
I'm gradually getting better. That needs to be good enough.
Yeah.
Because if I set myself up for this huge goal, boom, I'm going to fall.
Yeah.
So idealism and fall. It's that argument about perfectionism. You see,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
if I set the bar at perfection, nobody's perfect, including me, and I will not reach it. And when I don't, it'll be a failure.
Yeah.
Because of the way
Progress, not perfection. Yeah.
I'm setting myself up for failure and discouragement and disappointment. And then I give up and I put my weight back. Whatever weight I've lost, I put it back on.
Yeah.
So much better
Well,
to be gradual about it.
yeah. Well, even when you start talking about depression, a lot of times it's because we want perfection in every aspect of our lives. And sometimes we have to, what we call peanut butter spread it, where we go, okay, this is not perfect in these areas, but it's good enough. Like these, this blend of these different areas in my life, it makes me happy, it makes my family happy. And, and it's good enough in all of these areas. We could get 100%, we could do this, we could do that, but you go, okay, sometimes good enough has to be good enough. And if all around your health is good with that, and that's the key is being good enough with good enough.
Yeah. So, what I say to myself, therefore, is, I'm not doing well. I need to turn this around.
Yeah.
Or I'll say, I'm better than I was. And if there are things that I can think of that I can do to be even better going forward, and it's realistic, I'll do those things.
Yeah.
Because we're all doing the best we can.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's a matter of thinking actively about what would that be?
Yeah.
If I were to do something this week that was better than last week, what would that be?
Yeah.
But I'm not going to make a list of 100 things that I did wrong last week and presume that I'm going to fix all 100 of them this week, because it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Even when you talk about depression, you go, okay, what is it that's depressing me the most? And what can I do about it? Because sometimes the answer is I can't do anything about that. And then sometimes it's, maybe I can just, nudge it just a little bit where I can live with it,
Yeah. So, a lot of people are chronically depressed because of self-image problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so self-image can have everything to do with being overweight. And so, you know, people, there are some people who are just disgusted with themselves, and they don't, they don't really do anything about their health as much as they just stay disgusted with it. And again, that's depressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what you and I are trying to do here is to say there is a positive way of
Yeah.
looking at health and weight.
Yeah.
And and you are right, not just you, Kim, but anyone else is right if you think that it needs to be okay in one sense to be overweight, meaning I don't want that to be a self-esteem issue. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be about self-esteem. It
Yeah.
should be about how happy do I want to be, how sharp a mind do I want, and
Yeah.
how long do I want to live with a minimum of health problems,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because you're not happy if you're in the doctor's office.
Yeah. No.
Very few people. There are a few psychiatric patients who actually love going to the doctor's office. They feel like that's where they're meant to be. But
Yeah.
but for most of us, we don't like going to the doctor.
Yeah.
I don't. I
No.
don't. It's a necessary thing, but if I can talk myself out of it, I will. And
Oh,
most people are that way.
yeah.
But the way to avoid the doctor's office really is to think in terms of I want to be healthy. I'm a healthy person making healthy
Yeah.
decisions about food, exercise, other aspects of my life, including my emotional health. And so I'm on this path of constant improvement.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And
like
one of these days,
I love myself as I am, but that doesn't mean that I can't get better every day.
yeah. Or another way of saying that is I'm not going to let this be about my self-esteem.
Yeah.
I'm going to have my self-esteem needs to be good enough anyway because I'm doing the best I can with this life, and that
Yeah.
needs to be good enough.
Yeah.
Having said that, if I can do better, then I want that for
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
I want to look better. I want to feel better. I
Yeah.
want to be happier. I want to be smarter. I
Yeah.
want to feel more athletic. I
Yeah.
want that for me.
Yeah. I always say the day that you stop making progress is the day you die. No more
Yeah,
progress.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. No,
And
absolutely.
may I, at this point, make a point about self-education?
Oh, yes.
That,
Yes.
that being healthy is a matter of learning how to do it.
Yeah.
You make it a hobby, you make it a special
Yeah.
project, you decide to become an expert in the area, and you will be. You
Yeah.
will be an expert. Even if you don't record videos and write books, you will be an expert.
Yeah.
Okay? And I like that rather positive approach to self-education.
Yeah.
That if I read a few books on this, I will be an expert, and I want to be able to think about myself that way.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
want to pat myself on the back for knowing. Uh, so you know, self-education in this information
Yeah.
age means you go online, you
Oh,
start
yeah.
reading about it. You go on Amazon, you find a book about it,
Yeah.
and you work on that gradually. And as that health mindset starts to take over, well, that's the new hardwiring that we
Yeah.
were talking about
Your
earlier.
new identity. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
right.
about creating an identity of I am a healthy person and my goal is to be
Yeah.
healthier every day. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's interesting, you know, when people get into these eating disorders, I call it the ed head. So your ed head takes over and your
Mm-hmm.
ed head starts saying things like, oh, you're not good enough, you need this, you need that. But you know, the thing is once you start getting that nutrition in your body, and that's one thing I do want to bring up too, talking about nutrition, is a lot of times a malnourished body will cause depression. And a lot of times when we think malnourished or undernourished, we think of really thin, you know, skeleton looking people. But when you look at the statistics, actually the majority of our population in the US is undernourished because, you know, we eat crap. You know, so we're not getting our vitamins, we're not getting our fiber, you know, we're not getting our vitamin D. you know, and so we're not getting a lot of things. And so our bodies are undernourished, and that can cause depression.
You know, one of the symptoms of depression is helplessness.
Yeah.
And again, in depression, people can easily believe that they're helpless to do anything about,
Yeah.
in this case, their health. It's like, well, you know, yeah, I could become an expert on it, but it won't work. You know, I'm never good at anything.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's that worthless, helpless,
Yeah.
and women in particular. You know, men tend to meet life, if they're depressed, they become kind of cynical and sour. Women tend to become helpless,
Yeah.
you know, and I say over and over again, you are not helpless.
Yeah.
Don't tell yourself that you
No.
can't do anything about this,
Yeah.
because you can. It's going to take more energy
Yeah.
than you're inclined to put in. And again, a symptom of depression is low energy.
Yeah.
And people will think, and again, unless we're actively talking about it, that in that low energy state, they're not motivated, and therefore they can't do anything.
Yeah.
Notice helpless again.
Yeah.
So low energy, low motivation, helpless, hopeless,
Yeah.
and then that they slow down,
Yeah.
meaning they're actually burning fewer calories, because they don't move around very much.
Yeah.
So they say, well, what do I do about that? Well, you have to override it to
Yeah.
some degree. You have to
Yeah.
think in terms of, you know, I won't, you know, I don't feel like going out, but I'm
Yeah.
going to,
And
because I know
start
it's
small. You know, it could just be a walk around the house. You go, okay, I've gotten, you know, the
uh,
exercise I am capable of today.
but it is a matter of overriding the helplessness. You have to
Yeah.
know to look for it, but
Yeah.
then when you see it, it's like, okay, there it is again. I
Yeah.
can't give in to that. I can, but I'm never going to feel better if I do.
Oh yeah. 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 You just keep digging. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. This has been an outstanding talk, and this is why I love talking to you, because I know that both of us, you know, we think very similarly about health, and we can have healthy debates about different things, and we can provide different perspectives for the audience, and this is just outstanding. I mean, I look forward to this every week, as I'm sure that our audience does. But I think this is a good place to stop, because I know that a lot of people, you know, anything beyond an hour, we go, okay, like this is really cutting into my me time or my family time. And so we'll stop here, but there are plenty of talks to come, because we have already planned out, you know, like more talks to come. And so if you want to check out more from Dr. Hagan, you can check out his website. It's going to be terryhaganmd.com, and that's TerryHaganMD.com. And if you have issues with eating disorders, or you want to get some free stuff off of my website, you go to ourworldempowered.com. And this is what both of us are about, is empowering ourselves and taking control of our lives, and not going into this helplessness, because we have so much strength left that sometimes it just takes a reminder to go, no, you really are strong, and you really can pick yourself back up. So until next time, thank you, Terry, and it is always a pleasure to have you on. And for the audience, we will see you next time.